Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the SMITE update. This time around we'll be covering a small little patch that just got released about a day ago. It covered a few little adjustments after the Neith release. You know, some small things that got, because they removed the focus and they had to adjust a few things here. But just to get things started, go ahead and start out. I have my co-host here, Octane Pro.
Excellent. Well, how's it going, guys? Thank you very much again, Dry Bear. Yeah, it's been a great week for SMITE. A lot of announcements here and there, a lot of changes going on within the tournament community. More and more tournaments actually coming to light now, which is great. I remember back when I first got into SMITE right around the WOGL Season 1, and that was like the only tournament. And now we got, we have conflicts on the weekends with which tournament you do on Saturdays and Sundays, and one's popping up on Wednesdays. So I'm really excited to be part of the SMITE community right now, and definitely eager to bang through this patch.
Same here. There's just like you said, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it just seems like every week there's another big announcement. There's someone gets signed, or a new tournament comes about, or more money gets poured in, which is something that everyone can be excited about. More money is always a good thing. Yeah. So and to recap what happened last week, the biggest thing that happened there is they released Neith, but on top of that they also removed focus from the game, which had a few repercussions, and they had I expect them to do patches like this for a few weeks as well, just adjusting people and getting them back to the original levels, and also kind of switching gears since they were in the focus gear in the beginning. They had all these ideas of balancing and were working so hard to get that working, and now that they've switched back to non-focus, they have to realize how are they going to balance it now after focus is gone, and figuring out how to bring that back to its original levels. So that's what we're going to see here in this patch. So we're just going to hop right into it, as it's just one of those things. So the first thing is they fixed a few bug fixes to start out. They fixed an issue in which some players sometimes get stuck in the login please wait screen. This happened kind of rarely, but when it did happen, you would just sit there and it said checking credentials, and you just sit at the loading screen and couldn't really get into the game. So it's a really good bug fix. Did that ever happen to you?
It happened to me quite a few times, especially the day that the patch came out. So I'm kind of happy to see this adjustment here. Once again, this is just a little bug. I understand. I think we're going to see a few of these kind of bug fixes over the next few patches, because ever since they came out with beta, they're kind of addressing a lot of these. So did you run into this at all yourself when trying to log in?
Only like a handful of times, and it was literally like right after the patch, like the first login I ever did, and I was like, what do I do? It just sat there for a while, which was pretty annoying. The next thing too, they fixed an exploit in the item store, and I actually don't know what this is. Apparently, do you have any experience with this?
I actually do not. I didn't see any problems. The only thing I saw, which I don't know how to be categorized as an exploit, was I did see a problem, and this is regarding the item store. This might be exactly what they're talking about, where I saw a post where somebody had gone ahead and jumped into game and picked Aokong, and when they looked at popular items, it listed the last god he played's popular items, which was Vamana. So I don't know if this is exactly the same thing with the exploit within the item store. Maybe it is, and hopefully it fixes that. I don't know. The word exploit, though, it sounds like exploit to me is more of like oh, hey, we saw a problem where you could buy 2 of these items when you only paid for 1.
Well, I think what it was, I heard hearsay of this, is there was like a certain combination of, there was a god you could pick, and if you bought a certain item in a certain slot, it would give you no cooldown on your ultimate or something. It was like something that was like, it was huge. And I think it only lasted, I think they actually hotfixed it before the patch, but they decided to put it in the patch just so everyone knew that it was gone. Right. But I heard someone talking about how if you pick a certain item at a certain time, you'd have like no cooldown on your ultimate. You could just keep spamming and spamming and spamming. So, I'm assuming they wanted to keep that hush hush for as long as they possibly could. So thankfully, that's just one of those things. So the next bug fix as well, which is something that happened to a lot of people, and I'm sure it's been happening for over a month or so. It's when the enemy team could get stuck in the darkness from Xbalanque's ultimate. So the Xbalanque ultimate, the runes would fall into place, the last one go into place, and then it would just stop, and you'd be stuck in the darkness bubble until you died next, or if you restarted your game. So that was pretty irritating, but luckily that is fixed now, so you won't be seeing that anymore. Did that ever happen to you?
Yeah, actually, in my case it was helpful. I just released a video this past week on YouTube of her turning into Superman.
I saw that.
I saw it. I leaped towards the mat. For those of you who didn't see it, I leaped towards the mana buff as her coming from Gold Fury there, and I didn't quite get in the mana buff area. I landed like in the environment, and all of a sudden her puts his arms up in the air, and I start flying, and I'm like, all right, I'm like smashing my keyboard. I'm like, come on, like get back into the game. And it was a ranked match. I was like so frustrated, so I was kept on going up in the air, and then all of a sudden I came down. It was like, awesome, great. I tried to leap again. It shot me back up in the air. Well, and I would keep going. Like, there was no roof. Like, he just kept floating higher. Well, anyways, all of a sudden, Shablanc on the opposite team, of course, used his ult, and as soon as that ult kicked in, it put me on the ground and I could go running. So it benefited me there, but it was only because that problem was there. I did report that bug to high res, and hopefully that does get fixed. But long story short, I'm very happy to see this adjustment getting made to Shablanc because that was definitely necessary.
Yeah, it actually it did happen in I was doing a duo commentary with Trendkill, and in the middle of the match it happened, and we just spent like 5-10 minutes running around trying, like, we just peppered the map with wards so we could see, and it was just it was a big event, but it's been happening a lot to a lot of people, and for quite a while as well. So thankfully that is fixed now, and won't be running into that problem anymore. So that was a big issue. And then obviously the last thing is they modified the back end technical methodology for retrieving Twitch TV stream information. Originally, since they just put in the SMITE TV feature into SMITE, and what happened is it would take information on streams that are online and how many viewers they have right when you log in, and then never update it again. So you would log in, and then you would check it 2 hours later, and it would say that, let's say I was streaming and it would say Driver's online, and I would go offline. It would still say I was online with the original amount of viewers that I had when you logged in, but obviously I would no longer be online. It would just give you a blank Twitch. So they updated the back end there, so hopefully that's working a little bit more effectively. Have you looked at the SMITE TV at all?
I have checked it out, and my understanding is you actually just got accepted into that, correct?
Yes.
So congratulations to Drybear.
Yay, me.
For getting into the SMITE TV portion of the SMITE game. That's got to be pretty cool. I mean, you're in a game, like you're in a video game in one way or another. That's got to be pretty neat.
I'm playing a game while I'm in a game being featured in the game. Yo, I heard you like games.
That's right. So anyways, I did check it out. I think it's a really cool feature. I'm really happy to see some of the individuals that they are giving attention to. A lot of these people that are listed in there are great contributors to the SMITE community. So I think it's great that they're getting highlighted, and I think it's the great direction for SMITE to integrate with Twitch in one way or another.
Absolutely. So we're going to be heading into the God section. Take it away.
So Arachne had a change this past week, as did several other gods. But the first change for Arachne was Drain Life. Physical power contributions has been added to this ability. Increased by 5% of your physical power per tick. So I'm going to throw this over to you, Drybear. Did you think that this adjustment needed to be made to Drain Life for Arachne?
Yes.
Okay.
What they did when they removed focus in the same patch, and the focus patch, the focus removal patch was so big that a lot of people didn't realize, the small little changes that they did. And one of them was that Arachne's scaling off of her Drain Life was removed. Originally it was there, and it got removed. So it's something that really does need to be there, specifically because Arachne's main strength is her early to mid game. Late game Arachne is not very powerful. She falls off, somewhat into the late game, and then the late game she's not very viable just because she's so squishy. So without that scaling potential on her Drain Life, it really affects her mid game to the point where she can't really flourish in the points where she really does need to. So I think this was necessary.
Yeah, I completely agree. Jumping on to our second god here with the recent patch adjustments, Bakashura, Eat Minion. The base healing of this ability has been reduced from 80, 140, 200, 260, 320 to 70, 120, 170, 220, and 270. So to give you guys an idea, it went from 80 to 70. So there's like a 10 gap there, and then 140 to 120, so like a 20 there. And then finally, a physical power contribution has been added to this ability, increasing by 70% of your physical power. So both of these adjustments actually made there for Eat Minion. Did you think that Bakashura needed an adjustment to Eat Minion? Was the healing too much, or do you think this is just a small tweak to kind of perfect him?
Well, you see that it went down, at max rank it went down by 50, so
Yep.
it was a pretty big nerf there, but then they added the contribution, and it's kind of like the flavor of the patch today is just, reducing the base values, but adding, scaling yet again, just because this ability originally was scaled off of focus, then they made it a base value, and then they originally, this was before the removal of focus, they just made it a base value, and then, since focus is gone, they're going back to originally, it was scaling off of physical power before, when Bakasura was first released, so it's something where, it just makes it so that the scaling affects his healing as well, especially, you know, looking back at Arachne and Bakasura together are both melee physical carries that don't have, you know, the team fight prowess that other characters would. So definitely adding scaling to their healing and sustainability really makes them more viable in the mid game and also in team fights as well. So I think this is very necessary for both these characters, and making Bakasura's heal scale but also have a smaller base value is pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's really good points to point out with team fights. You know, a lot of people will look at this kind of as the one-on-one early stages, not realizing, you know, a lot of these adjustments, like these two, very much focused towards late game. You know, let's make these gods viable. I think, you know, SMITE is and the developers is really pushing to not have, you know, okay, you go into a competitive match or you go into a team ranked, and you need to have these set of gods in order to succeed. I'm really happy to see that they're trying to take some of these gods, which in most competitive matches aren't used as often, and get them in there, so that, you know, all gods are even and anybody can be used. So I'm very happy to see both these changes, not only for Arachne but also for Bakasura.
Absolutely. And so we'll go ahead and go into the Cupid changes here. For Cupid, they, you know, again, they made it so the physical power contribution has been added to his Share the Love, which will be increased by 25% of your physical power per heart, which would be, you know, 75% overall in total bonus healing for all 3 hearts. So again, just adding more contribution from physical power. It's interesting too because Cupid was physical, then he became magical, then he's back to physical, and then they added scaling to his Share the Love, which originally wasn't there. You know, and it was pretty interesting to see how people adjusted to keep it being magical. They actually started playing. I saw him tried, and I myself tried it as well, going for a support build as Cupid, just going for heavy magic power and then going for Share the Love heals. So it's possible we might do the same thing here, and adding the contribution may mean that people who are even going hard carry may start maxing out Share the Love second after Heart Bomb, after, you know, the adjustments there.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, it was great. Share the Love was great in the first place. It definitely made, you know, Cupid quite a diverse god. But then adding this on there, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, I'm very happy to see this adjustment. Maybe we'll start to see Cupid a little bit more and more as we get a little closer to more competitive play. But I'm very happy with the adjustments that Smite's making right now. A lot of these balance changes are small tweaks. They're not, you know, giant changes as you talked about, where like we're going from physical to magical, and then back to physical. You know, these are small, little. Magical didn't last very long for Cupid, but you know, these are great, and I'm very happy in the direction that Smite's going thus far with some of the god changes.
Yeah, it does seem like in the beginning of the beta they would do these wild swings and changes, and now, you know, as they're passing the 31 god mark, they're going to be focusing more on fine adjustments, fine tunements, and making sure that everything's, especially with the removal focus, it seems like they're going to put that off or just ignore it completely for, you know, focusing on release as a priority there. So it does seem like they're making a lot of good choices here, and making everything less extreme when they're close to finishing the game. So the next thing is we're going to go into Hell here. And again, you know, Hell has she's been changing like the seasons, and they're just working so hard to make Hell one of those characters where not only is she competitively viable, but also not too strong in the casual scene, and also at all levels. If you guys are curious, balance is generally done based on the competitive scene, just because, you know, it trickles down. You can't really have a character being you know, balanced in the casual scene but too strong or too weak in the competitive scene, because really a game like this that is competitive based really does revolve around sponsorships and tournaments and all that kind of stuff. That's really where their main focus is. So, you know, if you're wondering why Hell's been nerfed or changed so much, or there's characters like that, it's generally because they're either underutilized or overutilized in a competitive scene. So that's why she gets adjusted here. So the first thing they did is they changed the base damage of these abilities on Decay and Restoration to which is her 1, to be increased from 60 at base up to 80 at base, but the max is the same, so it scales quicker. It doesn't have the same max value, so it's the same amount, but it's stronger in the beginning. And again, in the last patch, they did make it so it does have share cooldown, and also it has increased magic contribution, so these will do more damage. And they also reduced the cooldown from 12 seconds to 8 seconds. So what do you think about this?
Well, we've seen patch in a row that we've seen Hell get adjustments to, and it was definitely necessary. You know, the first few patches where we were seeing Hell dominate at all levels of the game, And it took a very large nerf, over several patches to kind of get her to the point where she wasn't banned every game. I mean, some people, look back like 4 patches ago, she was banned every game. Nobody even played her. Barely anyone practiced her because it was just like kind of one of those, oh, it's my turn to pick a ban. We're going to ban Hell. And they've been fine tuning her, and the last 4 patches have got her to the point where, if anything, nobody picks her anymore now. So I'm very happy to see that they're going, okay, we made adjustments where they were necessary. Now let's go ahead and fine tune and polish Hell, because Hell is definitely one of the first few gods that they did put into the game a while back, the first handful, should I say, and she's been around for a while. So I like what they did here. Instead of making the entire adjustment all the way through, they just made it scale quicker. So now we're going, before Hell was very, very good early game. And then late game, she was ridiculous. Well, now we're seeing, okay, we're gonna make a few little adjustments to her, but make it so that she scales properly, but that she's not over dominant. So I'm very happy with this change. I think this will kind of put Hell exactly where Smite High Res wants her to be, especially with the next few changes that we have in store for her for this patch.
Which is interesting too, because since they added the fact that the mirrored abilities in both stances incur half the cooldown. Reducing the cooldown on her 1 in both stances from 12 seconds to 8 seconds means that you will incur a 4-second cooldown increase rather than a 6-second cooldown increase. So switching stances using the ability is now 2 seconds more available than it was before. So that might adjust her early game and also make her a little bit stronger than she was. The next thing is Hinder Cleanse, which is her 2. The cooldowns for these abilities have reduced from 16 at the first rank down to 14, and then 12 down to 10. So another 2-second reduction in both stances for her 2, which is her Hinder Cleanse. So that's going to affect her ability to not only slow but also to switch and do that. So what do you think about this part?
This is just further evidence of that they weren't happy with how hard that they actually nerfed Hell. So they're kind of, I shouldn't say nerf. Nerf is a very strong word. Adjusted Hell. Nerf, and like buffed are very strong words. I should say adjust.
Language.
That's right. Once again, just as I reiterated earlier, was that this adjustment was kind of necessary. And I'm very happy to see the fine tuning. And this is definitely showing that like Smite is definitely paying attention to each of these gods, and they're seeing where gods are failing or where gods are having problems. And I like the fact that they're making these fine tunings to them. So once again, this is a very good idea from them.
Absolutely. So the last part is Repulse Inspire, which is her 3. The cooldowns have also been reduced again. Oh wow! So 16 at max rank, and 12 seconds at the first rank 16, and then 12 seconds at max rank is now 10 seconds at all ranks. So her 3 now has a static 10-second cooldown on it. Yep. I'm gonna shoot this right over to you. What do you think about that?
Wow, definitely. This is definitely very, very strong. When you're looking at cooldowns, we've pretty much seen across the board where, they go ahead and they build up. Well, now all of a sudden it's like, nope, first level 1, 10 seconds. That's pretty good. That's really good. So I'm eager to see if they keep this or if they adjust it. I have a feeling they'll adjust it a little bit more, maybe scale it back to make the adjustment build up. What about you? What are your thoughts? Did you think that we need to go from 16 to 10?
I don't know. So that means that when you use your 3 in either stance, you'll incur 5 seconds in the other stance. And so that means, her 1 will have a 4-second cooldown, and then her 2 should have between, it could be 8 or it could be 4, or 8 to 5. And then, her 3 will have a static 5 at all times. This might mean that Hell players can rely on when they can heal and when they can AoE damage more specifically, so they'll be able to just jump in and I have this amount every single time no matter what I level. So it might be something that will affect her as a character, and I think with the fact that you incur half the cooldown means that it means that characters or people who are playing Hell will be more intelligent about their use of their abilities and have more forethought on how they want to use it, and making this more reliable of a timer means that players who are playing her intelligently can rely on that more specifically and feel like, this is exactly how long I need to wait before I can heal or before I need to damage. So maybe it kind of plays into the fact that Hell needs to be that more, you think about what you do before you do it type thing.
Yeah, and compared to just like, hey, I'm just gonna go and spam it, you know, and smash the keys with hell, regardless of
One
what
three
form
four
I'm in.
134 134 13.
I feel like we're playing World of Warcraft again. It's like, all right, what is my battle rotation? You know, when I'm in this raid,
Just
you know,
get a
what am I
macro and
smashing?
spam it.
That's
Spam that
right.
macro.
That's right. I got my macro keyboard. You know, we're good. But yeah, great changes coming for Hell here that have been made, and we'll have to see how much they hold. Are we going to see Hell be in patch number 6 in a row? You know, I'm eager to find out. So jumping on to our next god here, we'll kind of break this in two. We do have Hercules, and we have Earthbreaker. The cooldown of this ability has been changed from 20 seconds to 15 seconds, which is pretty significant. A 5-second difference there. I'll throw this to you first. Was this necessary? What do you think?
Hercules was so shunned in the last patch. I mean, the 55 down to 40 didn't seem like a lot, but it really makes Hercules not very strong at all. It was almost, pitiful to watch the fall of Hercules, where before he was an auto pick, auto ban, fell into almost any lineup, very strong. Then all of a sudden, with the reduction of his strength in laning phase and how exposed he has to be able to use his Earthbreaker because the range is so short, it's like he just wasn't viable very much anymore. So adding that is definitely going to help him. I guess adding the cooldown means that he'll be able to go in and use it more often, but it doesn't change the fact that he's exposing himself extremely to be able to use it in the first place. So this will definitely ease the pain of Hercules players.
And to right ahead and bounce off of that, where you discussed kind of Hercules taking quite a bump in the previous patches here, Excavate has had an adjustment, which is pretty big, and I'm very happy about it. The base damage of this ability has been increased from 200, 300, 400, 500, 600 to 300, 425, 550, 675, and then finally 800. So this is a pretty decent increase for this ability. I'll let you go first, and I'll kind of say my thoughts on this. What did you think about this adjustment for him?
Well, it seems like they're switching the focus from his laning phase to him being a team fighter. So the fact that, I mean, if you guys are curious what the range change on his his Earthbreaker was, it's about a little bit longer than his Driving Strike. So his number 1 ability, it's about the same range. That's how far he can use the Earthbreaker now, which is quite short. So I guess, with the adjustment to his Earthbreaker in combination with his ultimate doing more damage, because ultimate really, I mean, the history of his ultimate has been kind of poor. I mean, it didn't do enough damage. It wasn't big enough. All that kind of stuff. It felt like you were being hit with a paper mache rock, is what it was. So adding this damage boost, and plus the fact that it does scale as well, means that he might be a little bit more scary in team fights. It also might set him up for good combinations like bouncing off an Amir wall or inside a Gold Fury or inside Odin Spears or something like that, meaning that if you use it effectively in combination with other players, you might be able to get a lot of damage, because this means that when it rolls and does subsequent hints, it also has increased damage as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think it was definitely necessary, and this is definitely focused towards his team fight phase. It was very weak. The past week or so, I've been going over a lot of replays, doing some shoutcasting on some replays, and noticing Hercules played not very much. And when he is played, his ult is nothing to run away from. When he uses his ult, it's like, oh, okay, whatever, take the damage, okay, nothing too crazy. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy to see they're adjusting this, and hopefully we'll get to see Hercules get played a little bit more and more, especially at high caliber play.
Absolutely, I agree.
So Callie is back in this adjustment of the patch here. Siphon Blood. The base healing of this ability has been reduced from 60, 90, 120, 150, 180 to 50, 70, 90, 110, and 130 per target hit up to 3. And then as well on Siphon Life, we saw physical power contributions has been added to this ability, increasing by 30% of your physical power per target hit up to 3. So once again, we're starting to see some adjustments a lot that they're making for some of these gods when it comes to kind of your physical power contributions on some of these abilities when it comes to healing, like Cupid. We saw some physical power contributions there. We're now seeing some with Callie's Siphon Blood. Let's start off with the healing part. Did you think that her healing needed to be reduced? Do you think her survivability was a little high, or no? Do you disagree?
I think that it was a little too strong, and it got a little too strong too quickly. So if you guys are looking at this specifically, it was at max rank 180 per hit, up to 3 targets. Now it's going to be 130 per hit, up to 3 targets, plus 30% of your physical power. If we look at that specifically, you know, I have 180 down to 130, which would be a loss of 50. So you'd lose 50 per hit there, which means that 30%, you'd need probably around, you know, over 150 physical power or so to be able to catch up to that. So that means that it's not going to be as good as soon. So that means it's kind of delays it later into late stages of the game. You're not going to reach, you know, 150, 200 physical power until, you know, past the 25, 30 minute mark. So that means that early on her heal isn't going to be as good. It didn't take as much of a hit in the beginning. You see 60 down to 50, only a 10 per hit loss, so a total of 30 health gain lost there. But, you know, in the later stages of the game and the mid game as well, it's not going to be like, oh my god, she just healed, and then you see like half her HP go back up. So this means that, you know, it pushes her closer to a late game stage and makes her less of a dominant in the mid game. I don't know if this is the best way to look at Kali, because that's really her only strength is her mid game and the fact that she can just dominate and do lots of damage, because beyond that she doesn't really have much else. So I don't know if this is the right track, but it definitely makes her heal more balanced.
Yeah, this definitely seems like a mid game adjustment. Late game, you know, Kali isn't one who's super strong late game, unless there's some crazy dominant lead that she gets in early and mid game. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy about the healing adjustment. I thought her survivability was a little high, but we'll have to see kind of how that transpires from here on out.
Absolutely. So Neith, everyone's big, you know, complaint of the day type thing.
Yep.
So they adjusted her a little bit, and the first one is very important. So her backflip, the cooldown has been increased from 10 seconds to 15 seconds, and this is probably one of the most common gripes that you'll hear from, you know, people, at least the competitive players as well, and also, you know, me, the members as well, is that Neith really doesn't really need much adjustment beyond the fact that her backflip is really good and has a really short cooldown. So, you know, adding 5 seconds to that, that's a 50% increase on the cooldown there. So I think that was very important to add the cooldown increase on her backflip. How do you feel about her backflip?
I love her backflip.
When you're using it or when you're against it?
When I'm using it and playing as Neith. When I'm not playing as Neith, I hate it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it's unbelievable. But looking at the game overall, this balance adjustment is definitely necessary. The only other option they could have went with when it came to cooldown was to make an adjustment to the distance that the backflip actually went. So I'm happy to see they're making the cooldown adjustment first before they go ahead and go crazy with the distance change.
Absolutely. So the next thing is Unravel, which is her 2. It's kind of like her ranged Kali heal. The base healing has been reduced at max rank from 100 to 80, but has not been adjusted very much, you know, in the first rank or at the scaling levels. It's pretty much at the max rank. Got reduced a little bit, and then the physical power contribution has been added, increasing by 15% of your physical power per target hit. So it's not as good as Kali's heal, and actually got a pretty big loss there. So it was pretty important to have that, and this is just without hitting a weave. This is just you know, by itself. So how do you feel about Unravel without being able to hit a weave?
Without being able to hit a weave, I kind of like the survivability and where it was at with Neith. I didn't think that was like a huge game changer, and it was very beneficial. You know, I mean, she's pretty much a glass cannon without that heal. So kind of sad to see that. I'm a big fan of Neith, but I understand where these adjustments need to be made. So we'll see. This might tone it. I mean, they made an adjustment to Kali right there with the healing. They're identifying, okay, some of these gods, their healing's a little too strong, and we need to make the adjustment there. So you know, they are, you know, our DPS classes. So I can see where they're coming from. What about you though? Did you think that it was necessary? Did you see Neith's heal too strong?
At certain points, and definitely at the late stages of the game, you know, and if we look at this empirically, we see 15% of your physical power per hit up to 3. At max rank, you're going to lose 20, so it went from 100 down to 80 per hit up to 3. So since it's adding 15%, that means that you really only need to be, you know, around like 150 or so before you start passing that mark. So again, it's kind of like the Kali effect, where they're looking more towards late stages of the game. So in the mid game, right when you pass the laning phase and you're into the early mid game, like, you know, 10 to 16 minutes or so, you might see a slight reduction in the effectiveness, but beyond that point, it's going to be much better than it was before. So it's kind of like, you know, you can't use it to piggyback off in the mid game, but late game it'll benefit you more. So it's kind of like this, pro con thing, which is, I enjoy that type of aspect in games where it's more, that you don't have a free advantage, but if you get to a point where you've built up enough farm, or you succeeded to a point where it's more effective, then you'll benefit from that specifically rather than just giving it for free. So the next part, obviously, if you hit Unravel on a weave, you also get a bonus healing from that. So the weave healing of this ability has been reduced from 200 at max rank down to 160. The starting value is exactly the same, still 40, and then the scaling again is not much, but at the max rank it went down 40 per hit. But the physical power contribution has been added to this weave part of this ability, increasing by 30% of the physical power per weave hit. So this definitely adds more of an emphasis on hitting weaves more than just hitting minions and getting a free heal.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the benefit. I think it's really, really cool to kind of combine this passive along with one of her abilities. I guess I would shoot this question back to you about Neith. Do you find that weaves are more common, are pretty common with Neith? You see them all over the place, or no? Do you think that it's not enough just yet?
It depends on the player, and it definitely, it's one of those things where you really have to change your play style to make it work. A lot of times, if you see a beginning Neith player, that you won't see very many. But if you see, I've been watching, like people like Jerby or playing Neith myself. After the first few games, I started doing things where I would just, if I had the mana regeneration, I would just walk through the jungle and start backflipping and throwing weaves everywhere. And it's important too. And what I started doing as well is if I knew a team fight was coming, I would start setting up weave points, like at choke points out of the jungle, or in certain points like that, just so I could, number one, hit him with my Spirit Arrow, or I could hit him with my ultimate for a big AoE. So it's, it's one of those things where at the baseline, Neith is just a good character, but there's this skill ceiling for Neith that really goes pretty high. Whereas, if you have the forethought to plan out your weaves in certain specific locations and use them effectively, you'll always have one around to help you out if you're planning those backflips out. And also, players that are dying and all that kind of stuff. So definitely, after playing Neith for a long time, you need to start planning those locations specifically for what you're going to need in the future. So those broken weaves play a huge part in Neith's effectiveness.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good point now that I didn't think about there. So jumping on to the next god here, Vamana, Colossal Fury. The amount healed every second during this ability has been reduced from 5% to 3%. So before I mention my thoughts, what are your thoughts there on that adjustment of that 2%?
I'm conflicted because as an
thank you.
As an objective caster and media member and content provider, I look at this and say, "Oh, poor Vamana." That's going to make his ultimate a lot less effective. He's going to have, it's going to change his playstyle a lot. But as a Smite player, I'm like, yes, yes, screw you, baby, yes. Because it's just Vamana. Vamana is just always in your face, and I think this does, it's needed and not needed at the same time. It's one of those things where it's like, when you're first looking at the values, like looking at, let's say Hercules, where you say, 55 feet to 40 feet, 20% reduction, that's not that much. You think about it, it's not that much. But you go into game, you're like, wow, this is like the wimpiest skill shot I've ever seen. So, the values are skewing there. So it does change things up. One of the biggest problems with Vamana is that he can really stick to a carry in the back of a team fight and then use his ultimate to absorb big cooldowns or big AoEs. It really, he doesn't really have much fear because he can use his ultimate to absorb a lot of damage and still deal out a lot of damage at the same time. So this means that his ultimate still heals him, but it's not as strong as it was before. You kind of have to use it more intelligently, which I do like. I think it was important to do so, and this might, change his meta and his involvement, and also, how you use your ultimate. You might be, if you want to stick to someone, you can. But, just watching streams and playing myself, it's usually like before Vamana's Colossal Fury lasted 6 seconds if you don't take any damage, but every time you have an instance of damage, it goes up, half a second, up to 12 seconds. So generally, if you don't have a lot of burst, you would just, not hit him at all for 6 seconds and then kill him, rather than, having him regenerate 5% every second for 12 seconds, which would be a lot of extra HP there, like 30% of his maximum HP. But now, I mean, it seemed like, my reaction would be just leave him alone. But now it's like, I can kill him now, even in his ultimate. It's one of those things where he's not completely protected. So, you know,
Yep.
it's one of those things where you can still kill him in his ultimate. It might be a little bit harder than when he's not ulting, but it's definitely possible. So I would give it a few more days, and also, you know, through the weekend for the tournaments as well, and see how Vamana does change. Vamana did need a bit of an adjustment. I don't know if it was specifically for his ultimate or whatnot. I think he has a very strong kit for the laning phase. His damage output is good, but taking out the defensive leg of Vamana might make him, you know, a lot more balanced.
Yeah. I'm going to look at two approaches here. First approach is actually playing with Vamana and then playing against Vamana. So playing as Vamana, oh man, this sucks. You know, it's like, oh, you know, there's a nerf there to the healing ability of Big Baby. Playing against Vamana, I'll have to agree with you. Thank God. I mean, it's so hard sometimes when you're in a lane and it's either you pick Vamana. And if you try to focus Vamana, it's like pointless because you're just gonna have a big baby, and then it's like, oh, well, you know, Vamana healed so much, it's pointless. There's no point in wasting all of our, you know, blowing everything to go ahead and get Vamana. So unless you have a gank available, so then you have to look at the other god that Vamana's laning with, and if it's like a Vamana Hades or something crazy like that, you're like, really? Like, who do I focus here? Like, this is ridiculous. So I'm very happy about this adjustment. What I've started to see actually the past few weeks for Vamana, and as you had commented on, you know, there kind of needs to be adjustment. Vamana's metagame has completely changed, where like now it's like structured like, okay, I got to get Mark of the Vanguard, but then my second item is Warrior Tabby. And it's like all of a sudden we're now seeing this tanky class as a physical damage, which is so hard to kill because most physical damage gods, they don't have this like crazy like, oh, instant heal, you know, they're big baby, you know, they can get out of it. Well, now with like Vamana, you have like this DPS class that does hurt, like hurts a lot if built properly. But that has this great escape, and it's like perfect for team battles. So to kind of go off the track there, what are your thoughts on the meta right now for Vamana when it comes to being such a strong DPSer?
Well, I think this will really, really help out with that a lot. One of the big reasons why we're in a tank meta in the first place is that, you know, there's no real way to protect your carries or your magic damage dealers, but specifically your physical carries, just because, you know, if someone wants to stick to them, they can. The thing about Vamana DPS is Vamana can use his ultimate to, you know, as far as like, you know, team fight strategy goes for physical carry, you generally wait on the outskirts until most cooldowns have been used, and then you go in so you don't get caught in AoE or extra damage or anything like that. So it's safer for you to go in and then you clean up afterwards. You're never supposed to be in the team fight the entire time, or more specifically in there in the beginning as a physical carry, just because you're too squishy and liable to die. You're supposed to come in at the end and clean up. However, when you're playing Vamana damage, since, you know, you have that ultimate to absorb that, he can literally be in there the whole time. He has no point where he doesn't have to leave. So he can go into the team fight, go after someone and stick to them, and if they pop cooldowns on him, he can pop his ultimate, regenerate all that HP they just did to him back, and stay in the team fight literally the entire time. So you know, it kind of removed him as it removed him from the role of being a physical carry or a tank as being both. Like, he's a physical carry and a tank at the same time, and can dish out a lot of damage. So I think removing that defensive aspect of his ultimate will affect that a lot. And you know, one of those things that I don't like about Vamana is that his kit is so strong. He has a movement ability, a knock up, he has a slow, he has a way to clear waves, and he has his ultimate. So it's just, he has a very strong kit in the beginning, very strong early game, and then it's just one of those things where it's like, if he sticks to someone, he sticks to him. And that's one of the reasons why we don't have physical carries as well, is because if there's a Vamana on the enemy team, no matter how many leaps you have or how many stuns you have on your team, if Vamana wants you, he's going to get you. So it's just one of those things where you can't really keep him off. So I think, you know, making him a little less defensive means that he's going to have to choose when he wants to go in and when he's going to, you know, end up staying out. Yeah,
very, very good points there, actually. And going on to the last change of this patch, along with the last god adjustment, Vulcan. Inferno Cannon. The delay between the Inferno Cannon being deployed and it firing its first shot has been reduced from 1 second to 0.25 seconds. I'll start out first and say I'm very happy about this. I mean, when you pop down, when you use any ability, it's pretty instant, except for like your alts, looking at like your meteor and like the build up and stuff like that. But when you're using like one of your first few abilities, spells, should I say, not abilities, I'm sorry, you know, they're instant. You know, you do a cast, it's there. Well, I can see why this was necessary. Like, it's kind of a disadvantage, you know. You go ahead and throw this cannon down, but now you have to go ahead and wait, and you know that small 0.75 seconds could make a difference, make or break a team fight. So I'm kind of happy that they made the adjustment. Did you think it was necessary or no?
It seemed kind of sporadic because sometimes they would shoot right away when you put it down, and sometimes they would wait the 1 second. So it seemed like there was, a bit of an issue there as far as functionality. But it does, it's important to have that, especially because the turrets are all, susceptible to AoE damage and specific targeting, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of times you wouldn't get full effectiveness out of the turrets. But it kind of forced Vulcan to go tanky. I don't think this is going to be a huge change, and Vulcan is really, as far as we've seen so far in the competitive scene, and also how he's evolved after the adjustments, is that he's really just a support tank with good crowd control and kind of like a shepherd type. He like hushes people into corners and keeps them in certain areas and all that kind of stuff. So I think this is important for his laning phase more specifically. And it did seem like there was a bit of a weird functionality as how his turret operated. So this might help him out a bit in the early stages.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that actually concludes the patch kind of overview for this week. Drybear, what are your overall thoughts on this patch?
I like it. I like the fact that, it seemed like they were removing, scaling potential from abilities where they really did need it. So yeah, I'm glad that a few of these changes went in. And I'm liking that they're putting some focus on Vamana and trying to, fit him into a more specific one role, not I'm going to do everything type thing. So, I do like that they're adjusting him. And again, I in the very pit of my heart, I know I hate Vamana, but at the same time, I'm cautious because I know they have a tendency to, at least in the last few weeks, over adjust or under adjust in certain situations, kind of like Hercules. And we'll see how Hercules gets adjusted again. We might see a lot more Vamana updates in the coming future, just to get him more acquainted with how he should be and how he should play and all that kind of stuff. What about you?
I'm happy the direction they're going. I'd like to see a few more tweaks in the direction of god rolls. They give us in the game of Smite, the option to go into gods and view your gods, and you can kind of categorize your gods, and see what they are, which is great. But I feel right now there is a lot of gods that kind of can move back and forth between support, between DPS and tanking, and to me, in the early stages of Smite, and I really liked, I'm talking months back, where your god roles were very defined. Like, this god was this type, you use this god for this and this god for this. And so it seems like they're trying to tweak it back. Not as hard, but they're trying to tweak it back to give more of each of the gods kind of their role in the game. And so I'm eager to see what they do in the next few patches, especially before the launch of the game. I'm really excited to find out, when that launch will be. I feel like we're getting there when it comes to the contents there. A lot, now we're really focusing on little balance changes. All the features are there, especially since the announcement of the open beta. So I think we're definitely going in the right direction at this point.
Absolutely. It does seem like they're kind of inching towards a more comfortable state for the game as well.
Definitely. Well, I think we have time for, we'll go with 3 questions here from the chat. While we wait for the chat to go ahead and catch up, want to remind you guys, there's a few places at different outlets that you guys can check out this show. For those of you that are with us live right now, you're checking it out on Twitch, on Drybear's Twitch account, which is excellent. If you guys aren't familiar with it, twitch.tv/Drybear. But also check it out on YouTube. If you're at work and need to go ahead and catch up on it, you missed out on the episode, check it out on there, youtube.com/DrybearGamers. And then finally, our final outlet is iTunes. A lot of you, threw some questions to us. Hey, is this podcast available in audio-only version? And yes, it is. So please make sure you go and check it out on iTunes. This Smite update. Go out there and leave us a review. Rate the show with as many stars as you think we deserve, and give us your feedback. We definitely want to know about it. And kind of get, we want to know, are we doing the job right, or do we need to make some adjustments? So, you have 3 different outlets, guys, and so hopefully we're doing the best job for you, because this show's for you, and we definitely want to put it out there. So, Drybear, you want to go ahead and take a few questions there?
Yeah, I'm looking for some to pop up in the chat. First one I see is your thoughts on the match of the day random battle, or the random match. I love it. I think it actually should be its own game mode. I think, all random is something that a lot of people do enjoy in pretty much every type of game. And also, there should be a random button in the picking stages as well. It's pretty important to have that as Agni gets owned on screen there. But yeah, I really like the game mode, and I think it should be added into the game specifically. And that's a good point there. What about you? Have you played it?
I haven't played it yet, but I have read a lot of comments on it, and I like the idea because I like if you play other MOBAs, you always have the option to do random when it comes to like your god, for example, as you had mentioned. And like the other day, I was like, oh, I don't know what god to pick. I was the first one, no one had picked a god yet. I was like, I'd love to have a random feature here. Now I know that some players are very. It depends on the player type because some people are like, oh, I only play Neith, or oh, I only play Vamana. And yet there's a lot of other of us that have been playing the game for quite some time and are very comfortable with all the gods. So it would be very cool to see that. And I don't think it's not like game changing, like a huge feature, but I think it's a great idea. And I see getting a ton of feedback on Reddit under the SMITE section. So I definitely see this coming in the future now that one of the community members brought it up.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna go ahead and shoot the next question over to you. How many gods do you think the final game should have? Do you have a opinion on that?
I honestly would have loved to see the game launch at 30, and not because I'm like, oh, ready for the game, but I think that was a really good number. That was when the God pack ended, and I thought, and I believe I thought Bart had said something that I heard where like that's kind of where their aim was at, but that of course changes. Project timelines do get adjusted depending on events that do occur, but now looking at the game where we're at right now, I would say 35 is where I feel it's going to be at and where I think it's going to be at, just because of the fact that we're in open beta now. It took how many months to get through closed beta, even though it was like it was like it really should have just been opened up. Like it was kind of pointless. Like, hey, anybody that wants a code, just message this person, or they pretty much were handing them out like candy. And it was like, why is this closed? Just open it up. Now, granted, I understand it comes down to server loads and adjusting that and stuff. But yeah, I see it coming soon. I mean, they're throwing gods at us left and right very quickly now. I mean, we just got Neith, and now we just had a Poseidon reveal the other day. So I assume he'll be coming out here shortly. What about you? God number and maybe timeline?
I don't think they need to rush it. I think making sure that each god is in a comfortable place before pushing it. But obviously more is better. And one thought I'd add to that is one thing that a lot of developers don't really do enough is that not every god needs to be competitively viable. They can make a fun god that's only for casual games. They can make a fun god for this or for that or for whatever. You don't necessarily have to, make every god part of the competitive scene and part of the competitive lineup. So I would like to see over 100, maybe in a year or two. But definitely don't rush it, and also don't feel as if every god needs to have a specific purpose. Because it's possible. I mean, we could have gods like if they didn't ever adjust Kali. I mean, obviously Kali never gets picked in competitive scenes, but she still gets played in casual matches because she's fun. She's one of those characters where it's like, yeah, this is a fun character to play. Who cares? She doesn't get competitive played. And she's interesting. She's different. It's something for the casual players, even though they generally do have to keep a competitive mindset when they're looking at the game, make sure everything's balanced competitively. But adding in gods that are really kind of like joke or fun or just enjoyable to play, but not really viable, it's still a viable option for them as far as developing characters and all that kind of stuff. So I'd like to see a lot of gods, but they don't have to force it.
Agreed. And do we have one more before we go ahead and head out?
I see a couple. I'm trying to choose.
Come on, we need quality questions here, people.
There's one that I get a lot. I'm going to skip that one. How should Hi-Rez address the tank meta that's going on to give chance to other gods in competitive? I'll shoot this over to you. What do you think?
Tank meta. I'll touch on like what I said before when it came to god roles and how I feel that SMITE needs to move in a little bit better of a direction when it comes to defined roles, allowing for a little bit more even playing ground when it comes to the competitive play for tanks. I like the availability of the tanks right now. I think we have some great tanks in the game, but then we have these like tank hybrids, and so we're not seeing some of the other tanks completely getting utilized because these hybrids are better. These hybrids can tank and also DPS. So I'm not super happy with the tanks thus far. I mean, they do the job, but I really feel that the meta for tanks could definitely move in a little bit better direction before the scene blows up too much. And the reason I say too much is because it's blowing up right now like crazy with the tournaments. What about you? What are your thoughts?
I don't think it's I don't think we're more specifically in a tank meta because of the gods. I think it's all about the items. The fact that you have, a really cheap, awesome early game item like Mark of the Vanguard, but you don't really have that for anybody else. I mean, you kind of have a Death's Toll, you kind of have a Vampiric Shroud. I mean, there's some items, but if they had like a really cheap tier 3 awesome early game item for physical damage dealers or magic damage dealers, I think we'd be, stepping out of that a little bit better. And also, adjusting some of the tank items, because there are a lot of items that have health and protections and a really good passive and all, like literally everything in once, whereas you don't really get that as well with other like carry items or magic damage items or anything like that. So I think it's important to adjust the item situation. The fact that items like Higher Than Enemy in Line is extremely cheap but extremely powerful at the same time. Gives you lots of HP, lots of physical protection, and also a very, very strong passive, which makes you more of an undesirable target when facing against physical carries and all that kind of stuff. So I think if they adjust the items, not only what stats they have on them, when they're available, but also the price that they have as well, I think we'll quickly come out of the tank meta if we make that more available.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I see one more question in chat, which is actually a really good question, from Fire Mango. And he says, would you guys prefer this game to become a highly popular casual game with lots of loose balance and more fun style gods compared to a small scene, or a smaller title with much tighter balance and a more built-up competitive scene, or something in between? Sorry, that was kind of hard to read. The chat was like going up, and I'm like trying to read it, like losing my spot.
Chase the paragraph.
I know. So I'll throw this to you. Where would you like to see the scene at if you had the ability to put it in one direction or another?
And this is something that LoL does very well. And he touched on the fact, Fire Mango said, would you rather it be somewhere in between? And my answer is somewhere in between. I don't think that casual scene should ever overshadow the competitive scene, just because the competitive scene is where the funding and the sponsorships and the money comes from, and also the publicity. You can have a really fun game like Super Monday Night Combat that's really fun, but it has no competitive scene. So it's not going to grow in big tournaments. It's not going to get any sponsorship attention. It's not going to get anything from that just because it doesn't have a competitive scene. The competitive scene is really the lifeblood of competitive games, so you need to have that. But one thing you can do, like in StarCraft, like in LoL, like in these big titles, you can have a competitive mode and then a casual mode. You can have separate, I mean, obviously you're never going to see a domination tournament up on, DreamHack Summer. You're never going to see an arena tournament, up on these big GSL or anything, like nothing big like that. You're never going to see that just because, those aren't competitive modes, but you can easily have those modes available to people that want to play casually without limiting the competitive scene at all. So I think focusing on that, and that's something that Hi-Rez does very well, and has been doing very well, is focusing on the multifaceted aspect of the game, adding in new game modes, adding in new gods, adding in skins, adding in all this kind of functionality without losing focus on the competitive scene, because they're still adjusting for the kind of scene, putting money into tournaments and all that kind of stuff. So I think they're doing a great job of focusing on all things at once. So that would be my answer, is just making sure that they always focus on the competitive scene but never leave the casual players in the dust.
Yeah, I remember just a few patches ago when they went ahead and said only level 30s can do ranked, and then everyone else. And when I saw that change, I was really, to be honest, I was really concerned about the future esports possibility and growth of this game, because they pretty much said, okay, 30s, you're over here, everyone else, you're over here. And everyone else that's over here below 30, you can't do the stuff 30s can do. And I was like, oh my gosh, this game is going to go downhill. But what we have seen, which has been a beautiful move on SMITE's part, is they've looked at other games. For example, I come from a StarCraft 2 background where I did a lot of shoutcasting and tournament events, and what we saw and what they did here was the competitive scene is a very small percentage of the player base, but it influences the overall player base very significantly. Well, your casuals are the biggest player base out there for StarCraft 2 and for SMITE. And what StarCraft 2 did very well, which SMITE is learning from, is they put a lot of attention into these casual players. And what happened, for example, like competition, StarCraft 2, they have ranks and they have leagues, and there's tournaments for the mid-range and casual players. Well, now take a step back here and look at SMITE. SMITE has completely changed over the past 2 months, where we went from that huge isolation to, okay, we're now going to go ahead and break it up. We now have teams in game. We now have this whole competitive aspect in game. And it doesn't matter if you're a level 30 and you're, on Team Root. Or if you're, hey, playing with 5 of your friends, but you kind of want to play competitively, from time to time. So I think High Res is looking at it, to answer his question there, is looking at it and going, okay, we want a large player base, and we want to make sure the casuals are comfortable, but we want to make sure we give the attention to the competitive side. So I think SMITE is in the best direction it can be going right now, but it has a lot of other games to kind of take notes from. So as of right now, I think we're doing great.
Absolutely. And there was one last question I wanted to touch on, but since we're running a little bit close on our time here, I'm going to go ahead and start the giveaway. Obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, this doesn't make any sense to you. I mean, if you're watching on YouTube, you're welcome to post a comment with the hashtag that you would want to get the giveaway, but I doubt you can go back in time to get the giveaway here. So I'm going to go ahead and put up the hashtag. Do you have a hashtag for me?
Let's see. Today's hashtag will be, because it's been the biggest change, is the word Vamana. Because of the changes that we had to Vamana today. So, and for those of you unsure how to spell it, Vamana.
So hashtag Vamana, and you'll be entered into the 400 gem code giveaway. And while we're waiting for people to go get entered in, or maybe if you're on YouTube and you're typing in a comment of hashtag Vamana, the question that was asked is, would you like to see runes and masteries in this game? Have you played League of Legends?
I have, and no, and no. They have no place in our game. I do not want to see that garbage in this game, and the reason being is because SMITE has a beautiful structure right now. It has a beautiful reward system in it, and I do not want to go see this rune system in the game where, I go ahead and I'm a new player and I play against Drybear, and Drybear's got all these runes and is decked out ridiculously where I can't do anything. Like, I don't like that, and I understand that, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make the matchmaking system better and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. I don't like that your god is different than my god, even though we picked the same exact god. I like it. It's like chess. You're completely even. You have the same amount of pieces. It all determines, what moves you make. Compared to, my piece is bigger than yours because I've been playing the game longer. So those are my thoughts. Sorry, a little fired up there. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, if they're gonna add in some kind of different creative system rather than the runes and masteries. I mean, I love the fact that you can customize your character and you can adjust it. If you want to go for an attack speed Artemis, you can put in attack speed runes or masteries, and they do have this in mind. They've had this in mind since the start of the closed beta. I believe it's been like offerings, and then something else. It was like offerings and sacrifices or something like that. But it was generally the same system as the runes and masteries, and I think they're putting it off. We might see it in the future. We might not. They might do the same thing that they did like with the focus or whatever. They'll try it out and try to balance it. And if it becomes too much of a challenge, or they don't really want to deal with it, then we might see it go away. But I don't like the current system in LoL. I mean, obviously at the highest level, it's awesome for competitive play, and it does add a sense of progression where you can build up runes specific. I'm like just playing LoL, even at level 30, it takes you so long to get so many different rune pages and getting all these different customizations for your characters and making everything more effective. I enjoy the aspect of it, but again, I think competitive games should have this kind of idea of you're having everything equal ground. This is something we did see actually in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1, where the competitive mods like Pro Mod and PAM4 removed like 60% of the content in the game, like Martyrdom, Last Stand, like 6 of the machine guns, all the sniper rifles but 1, just because they want to level the playing field and make everything as balanced and competitive as they could. That's something you really need to focus on in a game like this, where you want everything to be even and specific, and then focus on allowing the items and the active items and the consumables to be your customization, rather than like runes and masteries or offerings or whatever they want to do. So definitely something to go along with there.
Yeah, I mean, I as I said before, come from that StarCraft 2 background, and I like the fact that that the game results and the path the game goes comes down to skill, not items you get before the game. So, and what I mean by that is, yes, I understand in the game that you get items, but that's part of the skill portion. All the items that you do get in the game as you're playing within a conquest or whatever are situational. So there's a skill kind of portion to that, and I don't like the difference there. And so, but that might just be my StarCraft 2 background and how I like going head to head versus Drybear, and we're completely equal when we enter into that game, regardless of our past and our experience and game time and all that stuff. So those are my last.
Okay, so we're sitting at 91, and if you're just tuning in, you want to be part of the 400 gem code giveaway, type in hashtag Vomana in chat right now. I'm going to give you a little bit longer. Me and Octane actually have an obligation after this. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up soon, so I'll give you another 30 seconds, and we'll go ahead and give those gems away. Actually, let's do an outro here, and then we'll cut the recording, then we'll go straight into
Sure.
that. So, I'll turn it to you for shout-outs.
Sure, definitely. Please make sure you guys check me out foremost right over at youtube.com/OctanePro. SCII. I've been getting into a ton of shoutcasting of replays, and now that I have spectator mode, I'm going to be doing a lot more spectator recordings as well. So please check me out there. And I post a ton on Twitter several times a day, twitter.com/OctaneProSC2. And then finally, I stream a few times a week and do a lot of the shoutcasting live on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/OctaneProSCII. What about you, Drybear?
Type in your stuff in chat right now, and obviously if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to check the description for any possible links that you will be able to find for that. But obviously, since you're watching this, wherever you're watching this on my stream at twitch.tv/Drybear. And one last thing, if you want to be eligible for the giveaway, make sure you are following my channel. The follow button at the top left corner above the stream window. If you want to find me on YouTube, you can find me at youtube.com/DrybearGamers, which is identical to my Twitter, which is twitter.com/DrybearGamers as well. You can look for that as well. And then if you're looking at YouTube, I do post between 2 to 3 videos a day on YouTube. I do stream as well, so you can find me there. Also, there's a lot of stuff going on. If you are looking at this on YouTube, you'll see the patch notes link in the description, and also that. But definitely, go check out Octane. Octane's been doing a lot of work with shoutcasting, all that kind of stuff. So go check out his channel. Don't forget to subscribe and follow and all that kind of stuff. But as far as the show goes, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. And we look forward to seeing you in our next SMITE update.